They called it the Continuum. We called it a grave without a marker. I am Admiral Solon Kale, commanding officer of INS Unwritten Record, lead ship of the Temporal Compact. I am recording this account on the date that matters, the day we came out the other side, because every name on that list deserves a witness who can speak to what we did and why we did it. 211 years before I was born, the Continuum opened a corridor. They did not announce it. They did not declare war or issue an ultimatum or ask permission. A civilization 4,000 years ahead of us on the calendar simply decided that the past was a resource, that humans living in the outer transit corridors of the 22nd century were unregistered biological material, pre-integration inventory, raw stock for a future that had already decided it owned us. They built their corridor quietly, anchored it to a deadweight gravitational 0.3 light hours past the Sovath boundary, and they began taking people. The intake records, which we found, eventually, because the Continuum kept meticulous records of everything it owned, categorized each extraction as a pre-integration resource event. Pyre 001 through Pyre 3118447. The first was a cargo handler named Adam Solis, taken from a transit platform at Waystation Korath on a Tuesday morning, while his shift rotation was still logged in the personnel system. The last, 200 years later, was a 12-year-old girl named Vanna Oral, lifted from a sealed habitat ring during what the Vithani Continuum logged as a routine acquisition sweep. Neither of them appears in Earth's historical record. That was the point. The Continuum didn't just take people, it pruned the timeline behind them, adjusted the data, altered the passenger manifests, filed the missing person reports under system error. For 200 years, 318,000 human beings ceased, in the official record, to have ever existed at all. We found the corridor by accident. An astrophysics probe, running a deep survey sweep of the Sovath boundary, detected a gravitational signature that shouldn't have been there, a fixed point in space that bent light in a way no natural body could explain. The probe's AI flagged it as anomalous and filed a report. The report sat in a queue for 3 years. When a junior analyst named Deva Karath finally pulled it, she ran the signature against theoretical models for 17 hours, then walked into her supervisor's office and said 4 words. Someone opened a door. We did not close it. I want that on the record. The debate at the Admiralty level lasted 11 days. There were those who argued that we should seal it, study it, contain it, that reaching into the future uninvited was a provocation we couldn't predict, a civilization we couldn't assess, a war across 4,000 years of time that we had no framework for waging. I heard those arguments. Some of them were made by people I respect. They were not wrong about the uncertainty. I argued something simpler. The corridor was already open. The Continuum had already come through it, 318,447 times. They had already made their decision about what we were. They had decided we were pre-integration inventory. They had decided our lives were resource events. They had decided our names were numbers in an intake system, and they had spent 200 years acting on that decision without asking us, without warning us, without ever once considering that we might object. The only question before the Admiralty was whether we agreed with their assessment. We did not agree. The Temporal Compact assembled in 93 days, 1,100 warships, organized into 31 strike columns, 1 column for each major Continuum installation we could identify from the intake records they had so carefully kept. We named each column after the habitat or waystation where the first extraction in its assigned sequence had occurred. Column 1 was named Korath. Column 31 was named for the habitat ring where Vanna Oral had lived. I stood on the bridge of INS Unwritten Record on the morning we crossed. The corridor was visible through the viewport, not dramatic, not blazing, just a slight distortion in the starfield, a shimmer where the geometry of space folded 4,000 years of future time into a single point you could walk through. I have commanded warships for 29 years. I have seen things that would require another 29 to describe accurately, but I have never stood at a threshold quite like that one. We went through in sequence, column 1 first, then the rest, a disciplined stream of steel and intent, passing from our century into theirs. The crossing itself took 4 hours. On the other side was the Vithani Continuum. A civilization of extraordinary technological sophistication, a culture that had mastered temporal mechanics, genetic architecture, and stellar engineering across 4 millennia of unbroken development. They were extraordinary. They had also been taking our people for 200 years and logging them as inventory. Vithani Prime's orbital defense grid detected us approximately 14 minutes after Column 1 emerged. Their response was to hail Column 1's lead ship with a demand for identification and authorization codes. The hailing officer's voice, as it came through translation, carried the particular tone of an institution that has never had to contemplate an answer it did not already own. They asked who we were. They asked by what authority we had entered continuum space. They asked us to state our purpose and await processing. Column 1 transmitted the complete Pyre intake registry, all 318,447 entries, with names, extraction coordinates, and dates appended, and then proceeded to Continuum Installation Keth 1, the Northern Hemisphere's primary administrative hub, and dismantled it. There was no further hailing. We worked through the 31 installations in 17 days. Cold, methodical, 1 column per installation. In the same sequence the extractions had occurred. Korath first, Vana Oral's ring last. The Continuum's fleet was larger than ours, and more advanced by every measurable metric. They had weapons that operated on principles our engineers are still working to understand. Temporal displacement arrays, gravitational compression ordnance, point suppression fields that could unmoor a ship's position in spacetime for long enough to make targeting impossible. They had been developing those weapons for 4,000 years, against threats we have never encountered and cannot yet imagine. They fought. I will not minimize that. We lost 11 ships in the engagement at Keth 7, and another 6 at the Temporal Transit Authority's main station above the Vithani secondary world. 17 ships. Every crew recorded, every name logged, because that is what we do, because that is the difference between us and the civilization that had spent 200 years deciding certain human names didn't need to be in any record at all. We buried those crews. But we had not come 4,000 years across time to lose. On day 17, Column 31 reached Vithani Archive Station Omrath, the facility where the Pyre intake records were stored, where the data that had erased 318,000 people from the historical record was maintained and indexed and cross-referenced with the administrative efficiency the Continuum brought to everything it owned. The archive's automated systems were still operational. The records were intact. I transmitted them on every open Continuum frequency simultaneously. Every Pyre number, every name, every date, every extraction coordinate. Adem Solis, Pyre 001, Waystation Korath. A Tuesday morning. Vana Oral, Pire 318,447, Habitat Ring Tessara 9, all 318,000 between them, spoken back into a universe that had been told they never existed. It took 41 minutes to read the complete archive on a broadcast that reached every inhabited system in continuum space. 41 minutes, 200 years, 4,000 years. The numbers don't resolve cleanly. I've stopped trying to make them. We closed the corridor on day 31, from the Continuum side, using their own transit mechanics, because we had the archive, and the archive contained the technical specifications for everything the Continuum had built. I stood at the viewport of INS Unwritten Record and watched the shimmer in their starfield collapse to nothing. 31 installations, 17 days, 1,100 warships. I transmitted one final message before the corridor closed, addressed to whatever remained of Vithani administrative authority. The message was short. It said that the record had been corrected. It said that the corridor would not be reopened. It said that if another corridor was ever detected anchored to the Sovath boundary, or anywhere else in human-occupied space, the Temporal Compact would return, and it would bring more columns. Then we came home. I stood on the bridge as INS Unwritten Record crossed back through the corridor's last moments, and I watched the Vithani Continuum disappear behind us, 4,000 years of future time folding shut like a book. The viewport showed nothing afterward but clean, ordinary space. stars that didn't bend, a boundary that held. I filed the operational report with the Admiralty that evening. In the remarks column, under Outcome, I wrote 2 words, record corrected. The Continuum had believed, in its certainty, and its sophistication, and its 4,000 years of unbroken mastery, that the past was something that could be managed, categorized, harvested. They had believed it so completely that they kept immaculate records of every resource event, every acquisition sweep, every pyre number assigned to a human being they had decided didn't need to exist. They were right about one thing: records matter. We still have theirs.